Jessica Tarlov mocked Kennedy's intelligence. His response silenced the room. The studio lights burned bright, casting sharp shadows on the faces of the panelists as the live broadcast ticked onto its second hour. The audience was restless but alert, sensing something was building beneath the surface of what had started as another heated political debate. Then it happened that Jessica Tarlov leaned back in her chair, folded her arms, and with the smirk that carried both disdain and certainty, delivered a sharp jab. "Senator Kennedy," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "sometimes I wonder how you manage to hold office with the way you string together words. Do you actually understand what you're saying, or do you just like the sound of your own folksy riddles?" The studio erupted with nervous laughter, the kind that isn't born out of humor but out of tension. Some audience members chuckled out of loyalty to Jessica, others out of discomfort. On live television, with millions watching, Jessica had not just questioned Kennedy's argument as she had mocked his intelligence. Kennedy didn't flinch. He didn't laugh it off or shoot back a quick insult, the way so many others in politics would. Instead, he sat still, his hands clasped loosely on the table, his eyes locked on Jessica as if he were weighing the worth of words before letting them fly. The silence stretched long enough that even Jessica began to shift slightly in her chair. Finally, Kennedy leaned forward, his Louisiana drawl carried across the room, soft yet firm, every syllable deliberate. "Miss Tarlov," he began, "I may not speak the way you do. I wasn't raised in the same circles, and I sure didn't learn to polish my sentences at cocktail parties in Manhattan. I grew up in a place where people measured intelligence not by the words you used, but by whether your word meant something. You call my words riddles. Where I come from, we call them truths, the simple ones, the kind you can hang your hat on." The room stilled. Jessica opened her mouth to interject, but Kennedy held up his hand, not in rudeness, but in quiet authority. "You think intelligence is about sounding clever, but intelligence isn't about who can speak the fastest or pile the biggest words into a sentence. It's about seeing through the noise. It's about knowing the difference between what is right and what is easy. It's about standing up for people who don't have a seat at this table, people who will never see the inside of this studio but will feel the weight of the decisions made here. That's the kind of intelligence that matters." A hush spread through the audience. Even the producers behind the glass window leaned in closer, their chatter cut short. Kennedy's voice, calm but unwavering, filled the air like a sermon delivered to a restless congregation. Jessica's smirk faded, replaced by a tight expression that betrayed the sting of being publicly corrected. Not with anger, but with dignity. For the first time that evening, she didn't have a retort ready. Kennedy let the silence linger before finishing. "So no, Miss Tarlov, I don't care much if my sentences don't win me applause at Ivy League reunions. I care if a farmer back home understands me. I care if a single mom in Baton Rouge knows I'm fighting for her. And if that means I sound more like my neighbors than like your textbooks, then I'll take that as the highest compliment." The audience, unsure at first whether it was appropriate to clap in the middle of a live segment, finally broke into thunderous applause. The sound rolled through the studio, drowning out everything else. Jessica looked down, adjusting her notes, trying to regain composure, but it was too late. Kennedy had silenced not just her, but the entire room. The debate carried on, but something had shifted. Every panelist seemed more measured, more thoughtful. The sharp edges of mockery dulled after Kennedy's reminder that words should build bridges, not walls. By the time the broadcast ended, the audience wasn't just entertained, they were moved. Afterward, as the panelists exited the stage, Jessica approached Kennedy quietly. She wasn't smirking now. "Senator," she said softly, "I may not agree with you on much, a broken bar, but I'll admit, that was powerful." Kennedy tipped his head politely, not gloating, not triumphant, just steady. "That's the thing about words, Jessica," he said. "They lose their shine if you use them to cut people down, but when you use them to lift people up, they last." It was a lesson that hung in the air long after the cameras stopped rolling, and the message left behind was clear. True intelligence is not about clever comebacks or polished speeches. It's about wisdom, compassion, and the courage to speak with purpose even when mocked. That night, Kennedy didn't just win an argument, he reminded everyone watching that dignity is stronger than ridicule, and respect is more lasting than wit. And in a world so often hungry for noise, his calm response was the silence that roared the loudest.